Welcome to the Adoption and Output session. I'm Marieke Willems. I'm from Trust IT. I'm also in RDA Europe, and from there on we feed into the RDA Secretariat, which has a global support for all of you. So every plenary we organize an adoption and output session, and this year there was a lot of past few months there was a lot of talk about how we can take the outputs that we've already produced and make them into actual bridges. So how can we make the connections? So this plenary we're trying a new format, as you know, and I would like to invite Hilary up to say a few words on introducing this new idea.
Thank you, Marieke. So, yes, we've decided to try it on a domain theme-based thing. So we talk about sustainable development goals. We talk about disciplinary and domain-specific areas in which we think RDA can make a concrete contribution. So this is the experiment to see if that is actually true. So many people who will come up after me will talk to you a little bit and give you an overview of the different areas that will be touched on today. They are just examples based on the willingness and the volunteer activity that the Secretariat got when we went out and asked people to support us, including, by the way, the ambassadors that are supported by the RDA Europe project. From my perspective and from the Secretariat's perspective, but as the business, if you like, of RDA, we value very, very much your contributions. We value the work that you do, and we can only tell the world, I can only highlight some things if I know what you do. So we ask you for the umpteenth time to please tell us what your outputs or your groups are working towards. Tell us how we can ensure that your work is visible to the outside world. When I go around the world, I can tell people what this group is doing, what that output is useful for, but you are many, yes, and it's very hard to know. So people say, oh, you didn't mention mine, but I can talk about them all. That's my job, and I'm very happy, as I told you. You know, you're all like my children. Mothers love to talk about their children sometimes, so please do let us know, okay, what you're doing. But I ask something else from you. Please give RDA the credit it deserves. Okay, so I ask you to make sure when you're talking about things that there's an RDA logo there, that your group and pages are updated with wherever you're keeping your conversations going on. If you're doing it on GitHub, on Google, that's absolutely fine. Please, though, let the other people know. We know that sometimes people struggle trying to see where the conversations are continuing. So please, make sure that you tell people where you're doing the work, and when maybe you move on and you create something else, make sure that RDA is credited for what it's done, because that's how we show the impact, and that's how we can continue to sustain this wonderful community that is you. But we need to be able to show the impact. So that's my call to action, 2 of them for you, please. And now I'll let those who need to speak go on. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Hilary. So before we go into the 8 areas, I would like to invite Bob Hanisch to tell us a little bit more about how we're going to build those bridges.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Bob Hanisch. I'm with the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, and also a member of RDA Council. And I'm going to tag team this a little bit with Andrew Treloar in a moment, and Mark Leggett also contributed to this. I'm already in trouble with Hilary because I neglected to put the logo on my slides. Global challenges are a way that RDA can really have an impact on the world. And coming at this from the perspective of a new member of Council, it seemed to me that we could do more, and as a result get more for the business of RDA if we can make it very clear what our impact is in addressing global challenges. You may not be familiar with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There is going to be a display area over here on the left near the door specifically on this topic, and I encourage you to go there. But a lot of these topics are, in some sense, already being addressed by working groups and interest groups within RDA. There's also interest, however, from CODATA, our sister organization, if you will. They, starting about 2 years ago under the leadership of Jeffrey Bolton, then president of CODATA, put together a number of representatives of international scientific unions and came up with actually four areas, the other one not here yet: infectious disease, sustainable cities, disaster resilience, and agriculture. And they actually had some funding support to put together a technical workshop that was held in Dagstuhl, Germany, about a year ago, trying to identify the kinds of data and the interoperability challenges of those data that can be brought to bear to address these global challenge issues. There's a lot going on in RDA. I had the pleasure this morning of meeting Ingvild Mokman, who is leading the Data for Development Interest Group. There are a number of domain-specific interest groups that are addressing topics that touch on these global challenges. I will not read them all to you, they're here. A number of working groups getting into the details of areas of metadata definitions, interoperability capabilities, and so forth. And at this plenary, we've seen two sessions: a joint meeting that occurred yesterday under the leadership of Lindsay Barbieri, and a BOF this morning on developing a methodology for using RDA outputs and expertise to solve real-world problems. So there's tremendous interest here at the grassroots level. I'm here to perhaps give a little bit of a top-down perspective, and I'm going to ask my colleague Andrew Treloar to come up and talk about how we might proceed with this.
Thanks, Bob, for that great positioning. My name's Andrew Treloar. I work for the Australian Research Data Commons, and I'm on the Technical Advisory Board. And I've been involved in RDA from the beginning. And RDA is doing wonderful work and is producing lots of wonderful outputs, but the outputs are individual components. And so when I developed this slide, I thought, what we should be focusing on is building the bridges rather than building the bricks. And someone pointed out in the workshop this morning that Martin led, that in fact we shouldn't be building bridges, we should be building bridge-building kits. So what we should be doing is we should be making it easier for other people to build the bridges that they need to get over the barriers that they face. So from an RDA point of view, looking at how we bring the outputs together, what I'm really interested in doing is seeing how we can take the elements that we have already, identify what elements are missing to provide the kits that will let you build the bridges you need. Now, the problem with this approach is that this is potentially something that could be seen as technology push. And so I think it's important to see the Sustainable Development Goals approach as a way to motivate what we do. So many of us got involved in RDA in order to make a difference, and I think responding to the Sustainable Development Goals is a concrete way for us to think about how we focus our work to make a difference in the world. In fact, picking up on the theme for this conference, data makes a difference. I think focusing on SDGs is a way for RDA as a whole to make a difference.
So what can we do going forward? Certainly we want to better align the activities of CODATA and RDA, perhaps have more joint working groups. We want to leverage connections with other related organizations such as WDS, World Data Service, and the emerging GoFair. We have an incredible amount of expertise and experience across the membership of RDA. And one thing that I would challenge working groups to think about, if you're not working already in a specific domain, is if you want to do tests, you want to build out a pilot, do it in a way that connects with one of those more topical groups. Do it in a way that connects with one of these Sustainable Development Goals or one of the CODATA global challenges. That would, I think, take advantage of the wonderful expertise we have, but apply it in a space where it has real impact and real meaning. We're thinking in the future from Council about aligning themes of future plenary meetings also with some of these goals. And in fact, I think P15 in Melbourne is going to be themed about data for real-world impact. So that's the message from the top down, if you will, but we want to encourage the bottom up and the top down to come together and make everything in the middle great. So thank you so much.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is each of these areas that we have divided the outputs and adoption session over are going to pitch their area to catch your interest and get you there. They want to discuss with you. They want to let you know what we have already in RDA in terms of working groups, in terms of outputs, in terms of adoption stories, in terms of adoption use cases. I want to invite the people that will be representing each of these areas. They are ambassadors for their domain. They are ambassadors from RDA Europe, from RDA, that will give you an overview of what's going on in this domain. So the first one is RDA for Agriculture, Caterina Caracciolo. Can I invite you up here? So each of you have 2 to 3 minutes, and I will really need to cut you after that, because then we will invite everybody for discussion.
Hello, so we made it. I'm Caterina Caracciolo for the Agra Semantics working group, and very honored to be agriculture ambassador for RDA. So my goal here in this couple of minutes is to tell you what we are going to do in the next session here in the plenary on the agricultural booth, and hopefully make you curious about what we do. So who will be there? It's going to be all groups directly related to agriculture in RDA. IGAD, the Agricultural Data Interest Group, Agra Semantics, the Capacity Development for Agricultural Data, RISE Data Interoperability, wheat data interoperability, and soil working group. What's the goal, by and large, high level, what we're going to talk, or what these groups focus on? They focus on facilitation of information and knowledge exchange and contact between actors and groups, semantic interoperability, capacity development, domain-specific data, and metadata schemas. We already have outputs in 2 groups that are Agra Semantics and with data interoperability. We are going to talk specifically about this, the outputs of the groups and the adoption that we received so far and our plans for adoptions in the future. And our question that we were asked by the RDA, the organizer, what's the main challenge for us? So this is really like the highest view possible for the challenge that we see. And the challenge is to make these groups communicating. So there is a lot of data and knowledge produced in RDA, meaning in the research environment. There is a lot of data produced in industry. It's a common complaint that it's hard to exchange data between these groups because of different reasons, from the actual data interoperability and the legal issues, for example. And there is also the other side. The other side is the smaller scale farmers. So what should be the end user of all our work. And again, there is a matter of capacity development, or the ability of passing the data, transforming the data into actual usable knowledge. So these are the issues and the questions that you'll be involved in if you come to the booth. So come and join us.
Thank you, Caterina. And I would like to call René van Horik on stage for the Social Science and Humanities.
This is the microphone?
Yeah, or this one.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello. I'm excited to be part of this experiment, as Hilary said. So respect my privacy. Well, my name is René van Horik. I work for DANS in the Netherlands. I'm also ambassador for the humanities. Humanities is the academic discipline studying human culture and society. Doesn't really have a central discipline, so it's quite scattered around. And when about 15 years ago digital humanities emerged, that was also the time when computers and ICT became more important, and of course now the RDA is an important organization where digital humanists exchange ideas on standards and guidelines, etc. I also represent the social sciences. Originally very much active in survey data. I just heard from Jonathan Crabtree, who was on the booth. We solved everything concerning survey data, but now we have a challenge. We have rich, complex data, different data, socials, also from social media, complex metadata schemes, and these issues are really coming to the forefront. And a lot of people in working groups and interest groups are active in the RDA in this, and a lot of you are in the audience, of course. That makes me a little bit nervous as well. But I think that, that research infrastructures are a very important player in this field. And in Europe, I mentioned Clarin, Daria, and CESDA as examples. And Clarin is a research infrastructure in linguistics and language. And I think they are a very good example how you can have a fruitful interaction between the RDA and this research infrastructure, because I think almost a lot of the components of this infrastructure are based on work done in the RDA. Think about position identifiers, identity management, web services, searching, etc. The Daria infrastructure is more active in the humanities and is more heterogeneous, more a network organization. But I'm happy to say that they're also starting up working groups on data management and will become more active in RDA. I believe that. The last example is CESDA, that's the research infrastructure on social sciences. Actually very active in an interest group on social science data. So, the challenge is the complex data. The research infrastructures are the places where the IT infrastructure is developed, and the RDA is the essential component where a platform for the development of the services. Do I still have time? Because 30 seconds. So, a short overview of a couple of working groups, interest groups. Come to the booth where, if you want to know more. We also have reports where we did an assessment of all these working groups with respect to their value for the field. Some of the outputs, especially in the field of the core trust seal, the certification of repositories, I would like to mention. There are people also at our booth that know everything about it. These are the resources. The slides will be available, so you can look later on it. And as I said, so I did some research into, made a report in the importance of RDA for humanities, and my colleague Ricarda did the same for the social sciences. The reports are also at the booth. Thank you very much.
Thanks, René. Now I would like to call up on stage Health and Bioinformatics, Anthony Uni. Is this one?
No, there's a PDF.
Good.
Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So, as mentioned, my name is Anthony Juni. I'll be representing the health data and informatics groups. There's a number of different working groups and interest groups that I'll be discussing today. Please see us over there in that corner if you're interested in learning more. But to get us started, the sort of grand challenge that each of these working groups will be aiming to discuss for the reproducible health data brokerage workflow working groups, the aim is to assess how do we ensure all stages of the data collection and preparation within the scientific compendium are fully present and transparent within a scientific publication or within a metadata standard. So if you're interested in learning more about this group, please follow this bit.ly link here or visit us over there and we'll give you some more information. In essence, this group is aiming to define what are all the elements within a curation workflow wherein data is extracted from something like a clinical data warehouse, all of the essential decisions that are made within that pipeline, all of the elements within that workflow, and then all of the associated code and materials that also are necessary to reproduce that workflow. How are they documented? How do we insert them within a metadata schema and make them shareable and linkable to a final publication? So we conducted a gap analysis to define each of those essential pieces and what are we gave each of those processes a name, and then also define what elements need to be collected and stored. This is building off cross-facilitated by work within the data citation working group. So we used and built up upon many of their principles. So it shows some collaboration across different working groups. We also conducted some brief tests and adoption test cases within the CEDAR working group at Stanford University to build some metadata schemas for collecting this data and sharing it within a JSON or RDF schema and linking it to other essential publications or research outputs. If you'd like to learn more about this work, please do come and visit us. We are really seeking more adopters or more collaborations to see how we could implement this within other metadata repositories or other use cases and workflows where this work could be scaled. Please, if you're interested in participating in this and if you have some use cases that you think would be of interest, please join us. Please feel free to join our working group as well. In addition, there is a blockchain applications and health working group. That is their output link there, as well as their working group that you're able to access. They are mostly interested in what is the current state of art of blockchain within the health within the health field, and then how do we build upon that and collaborate across different working groups, as well as what are the impacts within clinical decision support, clinical data security and patient security, as well as the larger impacts within healthcare delivery within a hospital. If you're interested in learning more about this, please feel free to join the working group. They're interested in gathering more adopters and building upon the report, which is accessible here. This is their main report describing the current state of the art. I'd like to acknowledge as well as all of the colleagues that are highly involved in this work. Please, if you know any of these names, reach out to them, grab them by the elbow. They'd love to talk more about this. And thank you for all of your attention and participation throughout the plenary. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Anthony. That was real quick. So now it's time for RDA for engineering. Can I call up the stage Anna? Yes? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Slavec. I'm the RDA Europe Ambassador for Engineering, Renewable Materials. We are 3 ambassadors for engineering at RDA, 2 of them present also at this plenary. Personally, I'm not an engineer, but I work with researchers who are engineers, and I identified challenges in this field. First of all, a lot of the research is done in collaboration with industry, and because of that, they are very reluctant to share their data. They fear that they will lose the competitive advantage. They fear that their data is going to be misused or misinterpreted. I noticed there is a severe lack of metadata standards and ontologies, at least for certain engineering fields. There might be exceptions, but in most cases, things are missing, and especially repositories. So usually we just have the choice of institutional repository or a general repository. There should be more domain-specific repositories for this field. Engineers are underrepresented in RDA, but still there are working groups and interest groups on this topic. Some of them also present today at the table. First of all, Research Data Management and Engineering Interest Group, Persistent Identification of Instrument Working Group, International Materials Data Registries Working Group, RDA Codata Materials Data Infrastructure and Interoperability Interest Group, and Physical Samples and Collection in the Research Data Ecosystem Interest Group. At this plenary, I visited the meetings of these groups, and I think their work can be very relevant for engineers. There are, of course, also other RDA work groups and interest groups that are relevant for engineers. Chemistry research data, research data needs of the photon and neutron science community, data versioning, federated identity management, preserving scientific annotation, data citation, software source code identification, preservation tools, techniques and policies, and of course all metadata interest groups and working groups, because as I mentioned in the previous slide, metadata standards are missing, so we need richer metadata for the engineering fields. Okay, so get in touch. We have here the engineering table, and these are the people who, several of these people are now present here, so come visit us at the tables. So representative of the interest groups and working groups, and 2 of the RDA Europe ambassadors for engineering. Okay, that was all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. So now I would like to call Ryan O'Connor to the stage. He will explain us a little bit more about RDA multidisciplinary solutions. Should be there.
Hi everybody, so my name is Ryan O'Connor from the Digital Curation Centre at the University of Edinburgh, and unlike the previous speakers, I am not an RDA ambassador, so you're stuck with me for the next 2.5 minutes. So I will be looking after the multidisciplinary solutions or domain agnostic table for the day. So if like me you're new to RDA, or if you're unsure of how the various working groups recommendations and outputs kind of translate to projects, then hopefully this will be the domain agnostic table will be a good place to start. Some of the key challenges even, that we'll be sort of addressing at the table will be, first of all, how best can domain agnostic recommendations and outputs be applied across a range of research fields. So I guess my background in humanities, so I guess to put this in more sort of slightly more philosophical terms, what are the kind of necessary or sufficient level of abstraction required for outputs to be applicable to across multiple projects and multiple domains. Secondly, we'll be looking at what issues do we face in keeping domain agnostic recommendations and outputs up to date and relevant. Linked to this will be, I guess, the idea of how the various adoption projects and processes can be fed back to the working interest groups to sort of keep their various outputs and recommendations sort of up to date and relevant. And finally, I guess this point applies to every booth here today. The idea of how can we effectively communicate the results of adoption to both specialist and sort of non-specialist audiences. I've put together a list of some of the relevant working interest groups. There's obviously too many to include on one slide for domain agnostic relevance. Some of the work of the various interest and working groups that will be presented at the booth today are marked by the little asterisks there. Don't worry though, there's a bit.ly link at the end of this little presentation, so you can have a look at these slides in a bit more detail later on. So we have 5 presenters at our booth today. I won't go through them in any detail, but starting we'll have the adoption project of Dr. Mika Yetin, who will be looking at the 23 Things Revisited project. This project was part of the RDA Europe 4 project, which is it's an adoption project sort of underway. So that will kick off our group, and obviously there's 4 more groups will be presenting at the booth today. Each have 12 minutes, but obviously there'll be a lot of scope for people to continue discussions in a kind of a Q&A session afterwards. Obviously there's a number of resources available to people who are interested in sort of domain agnostic disciplines. I have a few listed here. These are more specific outputs and adoption stories related to the domain agnostic projects. Secondly, there's a bit more sort of a broad brush sort of a gathering of collections of various domain agnostic resources. So there's just the first link there is for domain agnostic, very sort of broad brush domain agnostic grouping of working group and interest groups and blogs and their various outputs. Secondly is the groupings of the ICT specifications, and finally there's some interesting material for any librarians or archivists or information science or any data stewardship professionals in general. This is some of the contact details for the people at the booth today. Again, there's a tiny URL link at the bottom there. I'll have this displayed at the booth as well, so you can just come down. You can I can send it on to you if you want to have a bit more detail at the slide. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan. Now we're going to talk about RDA for climate data and earth sciences. Can I call up Chris Schuberts?
Perfect. Yeah, my name is Chris Schubert. I'm one of the RDA child of within the adoption program. And I want to show you some picture of Earth within the of the Earth observation domain, and there are also climatological issues. So in Earth observation data are used for manifold application and information. And of course, there are also a lot of new technology developments, small, like small satellites, satellite cubes, drones, and so on. And they give us an access to new possibilities and new information, and of course, over the time. The issue on Earth observation is what we're getting in touch, and in the end is a missing a proper infrastructure, proper data infrastructure. So we have a lot of increased amount of Earth observation data, and yeah. In the end, we need smart access to this data, and also smart access to the data infrastructure. For the climate or climatological domain, so we are in the end we are confronted with a lot of questions coming to the researcher, and we want or we have to give answers really precise. Or in a precise way, yeah. But it's in the end a never-ending task to have these to provide some robust information about this. And with this sentence here, I'm also targeting regarding the RDA working group. So these data. Oh, these pictures are empty. We need to identify precisely data and data fragments in the whole process chain. This is a question what we discussed and also adopt and implemented within the data citation working group. Okay, that's my.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks. And so the last pitch is not a domain, it's not domain agnostic, it's an opportunity for all of you to highlight your work in RDA. Gina, can I call you up stage? Oh, sorry, you were there.
So my name is Gina Pavone, and I work at the Italian National Research Council, and I'm here to present this possibility to share the knowledge produced within RDA. There's a special collection of the CODATA Data Science Journal dedicated to RDA results. So if your working group or interest group has produced an interesting result, or if you were involved in an adoption case, or if you have any relevant idea or story produced within RDA, then you can be interested in submitting for this special collection. The CODATA Data Science Journal is a peer-reviewed and open access journal, and the idea behind this special collection is to have a place where to gather and to share relevant ideas and knowledge produced within RDA. There's no specific deadline foreseen, but there's a deadline for grants, because the RDA Europe for projects gives the possibility to have publication fees covered, and in this case the deadline is the end of May 2020. All the articles submitted will be peer-reviewed, and there are different types of articles that you can be interested in submitting, from research articles to practice papers, data papers, and also review or essays. In essays, for example, you can share original idea or discuss and debate recent relevant problems or ideas, and so on. You can have a look at the already published papers following that link. Then you will have slides, or you can visit me on that corner next to my poster dedicated to this call for papers. So thank you.
So I want to really thank all the ambassadors that just spoke, because it's not easy to pitch your favorite, your expertise in just 2 minutes and invite everybody over to your area. So I would like to invite everybody to join our experts, our ambassadors, our RDA chairs and adoption use cases in the areas. There's social sciences and humanities, there's health, there's engineering, agriculture. Oh, sorry, engineering is there. There's climate and earth sciences, SDGs, and CODATA. So please go and speak to each other, engage.